Meseches Bava Kamma Daf Beis. We begin the new Masechta, which focuses on the halachos of Nezikin. That is, if somebody causes a loss or a damage to somebody else, in what circumstances does he have to pay, and how much does he need to pay? Meaning, what is one's responsibility to prevent the damage being caused to someone else by himself or by his own property? So we begin with the Mishnah, which discusses 4 categories of damagers, types of things that cause damage that a person is responsible for. The Gemara will analyze the linguistics of the Mishnah and try to get into these categories, where they're derived from and how they are different from each other. So let's begin. The Mishnah says there are 4 fathers, which means 4 prime categories of nezikin. That's the word we'll use for things which cause a damage. And the 4 things are listed as shor, which is an ox; a bar, which is a hole in the ground; mave, which is going to be a machlokes in the Gemara on the next staff, whether that is a person himself or an ox's or an animal's desire to eat things; and then hever, which refers to fire. Now, these are all things which a person owns and is responsible for. If they cause a damage, he has to pay for it. Now, the Mishnah says, well, how are these 5 categories different than each other, and why does the Psukim have to tell me each of them? So it says, Shor and Mave, both of those are different than each other. The Mishnah doesn't say why. The Gemara will explain why. It says that those 2 are different than the hever, than the fire, and the fact that those 2 are living creatures, the ox and the human. And the hever is something which is not living, it's just fire. And those 3, shor, mave, and hever, are different than the bar because those 3 move. While the bar is something which is obviously immobile and it doesn't go and cause a damage, something could just fall into it, but it itself has no damage. And therefore, these are all separate categories. Again, the Mishnah hasn't explained the difference between shor and mave, but we'll get there depending on the machlokes. And what is in common about all of them is that they belong to you. You're obligated to protect people from them and people's property from them, make sure they don't cause damage. And if you do cause damage, or if they do cause damage, you have to pay for it, and you have to pay from what's called idis, from the highest value, the highest level of quality land that you have. Now, the Gemara is not going to get into specifically what the categories are. It'll get into it tangentially towards the end of the following discussion, but we always begin with linguistics, and the Gemara wants to, when you call these avos, when you call them prime categories, that implies that there are sub-items, or things which fall into these categories that aren't the headings. These are the 4 headings. They're called avos. There are toldos, or children, as it were, in each of them. The question is, what is the significance of the fact that these 4 are called avos, and the other ones are called toldos? Is there a difference in halacha? And the Gemara is going to explain the question by bringing examples of other places we have avos and toldos, and one of them there is a difference in halacha between an av and a tolda, and one of them there is not. And the Gemara wants to know, what is the story here? So the Gemara quotes, in Malachos Shabbos we have avos malachos. There are 39 avos malachos, prime categories, and then there are other things, other activities which fall into those categories, which are toldos malachas. And there's no difference in halacha between an av and a tolda. Both is an isur d'oraisa. Both of them, if the person violates them on purpose, he would get skila. And if he violates them b'shogeg, by accident, he would have to bring a carbon chatas. So there's no difference in halacha. Why then are they organized into prime categories? Why is one called an av and one called a tolda? So that's as far as how many karbanos chatas a person has to bring if he violates multiple isurim. If the isurim are from the same category in av and it's tolda, that would only count as 1 carbon chatas. They're both combined together. If, however, they're separate avos or separate toldos, and they're from different categories, they don't combine. It's 2 separate lav, and you have to bring a separate carbon chatas for each of those. Now, that's an example of a situation where an av and a tolda have no different in halacha. However, there's another situation where they do have a different in halacha, and that's by tumah. There are things called aves tumah and toldas tumah, and av tumah is a prime category of tumah that can transfer tumah to anything, to people, to objects, and to food. However, a tolda of tumah cannot transfer tumah to anything. It can only transfer tumah to food and drink, not to people and objects. And therefore, there's different halachos. The av is the thing that has the original tumah, and the tolda gets tumah from it, and therefore they're different. And what are the avos hatuma? So we have a Mishnah lists three. One of them is a rodent, one of the shratim, one of the 8 specific species of rodents which causes tumma after it died. The second is male zera, seed, and the third is someone who touched a mace, not the mace himself, but someone who touched the mace is an av hatuma. So these halachas are different. So the question again, is there a difference between an av and a tolda in Nezikin? So Rav Papa says some have and some do not. There are some that have differences and some do not have some differences. And the Gemara is going to explain this answer by bringing brises, or bringing at least a brisa to define what is an av and what are its toldas. So the Gemara quotes the brisa. The brisa says there are 3 avos within an ox. Now the ox itself is divided into 3 avos, or 3 sub-avos, depending how you learn our Mishnah. And the 3 things within an ox are called keren, shane, and regel. Horn, tooth, and foot. The Gemara will explain keren is where it is violently attacking for the purpose of destroying. Shane is where it's not intending to destroy anything, it's just eating, but it knows what it's doing. It's intending to do this action. And regel is something where it's just in its normal movements, it happens to break something. It steps on it, it sits on it, it squashes it knocks it down. It's not intending to do any of that. Now, the Gemara is going to have to get to this manner of defining each category, but that'll be part of the process that we do here. But first, the Gemara wants to know what is the source of each of these halachas. So first of all, the structure with the horn. Where do you see a source for that? So the Gemara quotes a pasuk in Sefer Shemos, which speaks about goring. It speaks about negicha. It says ki yigach shar es ish oy es isha v'mei sakal yisakal ashav lo yachal psari v'al hashar naki. So it talks about negicha. Now, what is negicha? What is goring? So the Gemara says that's something you do with the horn, and the way we reveal that that's the definition of the term yigach, the term negicha, is from 2 psukim. One is in Sefer Malachim, and another is in Sefer Devarim. The one in Sefer Malachim is Vayasei Tzidkiya ben Kenana Karnei Barzel Vayim Merkaya Mar Hashem Be'ela Tinagach Esaram. So he made horns out of iron. This was like a horned hat, and he put it on. He said, with these, you will gore Tinagach, the nation of Aram. And therefore you see a link between horns and the word negicha, and therefore the definition of negicha is something that is done with the horns. The pasuk in Sefer Dvarim is B'char Sharei Hadolai V'Karnerim Karnov V'hem Amim Yinagach. So it talks about Karnerim Karnov, it's horns of their aim, and it says with that you will gore nations. So again, there you have the word negicha linked to the word Karen. Now, the Gemara wants to know, why do I need 2 psukim? Why is it not enough to have just one? So the Gemara says the first pasuk is most definitely clearer. It refers to the horns, that you will gore with the horns. The problem with the first pasuk is that it's in Navi. We really should not be learning halachos out of Nevi'im. So the Gemara says that, one second. It's not a problem. It's not teaching me any halacha. It's just defining the term, just revealing the meaning of the term. So the Gemara says, okay, but you would have thought there's still a difference here. If you would only learn from that pasuk, then you would think that it's only those horns which are detached. Those aren't naturally grown horns. You may think that the term negicha means something which the ox is holding, which is not part of its body itself. Like if it takes a tool or a stick or an implement that holds in its mouth and uses to damage, that's a situation where you'll have the halachas of Karen. Now the halachas of Karen are that you only have to pay half the damages because it's unforeseen and it's not something you would have expected. So you may think that only something where the ox takes a tool, like the detached object, like the horns in the pasuk there, which are made from steel, made from iron, you may think that's a situation where you only have to pay half the damages. And therefore you brought the second pasuk where we're talking about the natural horns of the re'im to show me that the word negicha also refers to attached horns. Okay. Next, the Gemara discusses what is the tolda of Karen. So that is the prime category of what Karen, what horn is. What are the toldas of that? So the Gemara has a brisa where it says they are negifa, pushing, that is striking when the ox strikes something or someone with the body. Neshicha is biting with his teeth. Revitza is when he lies on something, and be'ita is when he kicks with his legs. Now, the Gemara says, let's go slow here. Negicha and negifa. You said that negicha is the prime category, and negifa, which is pushing, is the subcategory. Why? Negicha, it says in a pasuk in the Torah, but negifa, it also says in the pasuk in the Torah. It says ki yigav shar ishes shar re'eva mace. So both of them are listed in the psukim. Why should one be prime category and one be a subcategory? So the Gemara says, no, that negifa there doesn't mean pushing. That negifa means goring. It means the same as negicha. And the way that you see that is because we have a brisa that says this pasuk starts out talking about negifa and it ends up talking about negicha. A few words later, it says, or it was known that he is a goring ox. So again, we begin with the term negifa, we end with the term negicha to show that those two can be used to mean the same. In this context, they mean the same thing. And why are different words used? So they're both talking about goring. One's talking about goring an ox, and one's talking about goring a person. So negicha is goring a person. Negifa, in this context, means goring another animal. And the reason we use different words for that is to teach me that there is a slight difference between the two. Negicha of a person, it's harder for an ox to do. People are more intelligent, they're able to protect themselves, and also they have something called mazel. They have a certain amount of siyata d'shmaya not to get hurt. And therefore, if an ox manages to gore him, that ox was really intending to do it. And that is much more severe. On the other hand, negifa is goring another animal. The animal is less aware, less able to take care of himself, and doesn't have any mazel. Therefore, it's possible that the attacking ox didn't really intend to hurt him as much as if he pursued and attacked a person. And this is important because there's a halacha that when an animal has attacked 3 times, it becomes a muad, and now its liability of its owner increases from half the damages to the full damages. But it's only for the activity that it has established a reputation for being violent in that way. Now, if you have an ox that has a reputation of goring people, that means it certainly has a reputation of goring animals, because that is an increased level of intensity in its intent and its violence. So if it even does people, it certainly will do animals. The other way, however, it doesn't go. If it only has established a reputation for attacking animals, which are easy, which it doesn't really have to intend, it doesn't have to pursue, it does not mean that it's ready to go to the next step and attack people. So as far as that, it hasn't established that reputation. Even if it's attacked an animal 3 times, does not mean that it has to pay full damages when it is attacked, if it then goes ahead and attacks a person. Okay, now the Gemara continues analyzing the other toldos, the other subcategories on the list. So we said Neshicha, that if it attacks someone with his teeth and bites him, so that sounds like it should be in the category of Shane, of tooth. How is that different than the tooth damages? The Gemara says, no. Shane doesn't necessarily mean tooth. Shane means where the animal is eating or getting pleasure out of what he's doing. This is a pleasurable activity for the animal. He intends to do this, but he's not intending to destroy. He's intending to get something for himself. Biting is not that. Biting, he may be using his teeth, but biting is an act of violence. And he's intending to hurt, maim, and destroy. It does not go in the category of Shane, which is a pleasurable activity. Now, the next thing on the list was Revita, which is when it squats. It lies down, and be'ita when it kicks. So the Gemara says that should fit in the category of regel. Regel means foot. The animal squats by bending its feet, and it kicks by swinging its foot. So that just sounds like a foot damage. The Gemara says no. The definition of regel is something that it does in its normal activities without any intent, just as it goes, as it walks. Here we're talking about where it intends to break something. It lies down on something in order to crush it, and it kicks in order to break something. That's why those categories are different than the other ones. Okay, so now we know what the categories of Ashar are. But where do you see what Rav Papa was trying to say, that there are some subcategories which are the same as the prime categories and some that are different? All of these seem to be exactly the same. They all pay half nezek for something that you do on purpose, and they pay whole nezek when it becomes a muad. So where do you see anything that's different than its prime category? So the Gemara says, you're right. In these 3, these are all Karen. There isn't anything that's different than its prime category. And the differences are going to be in Shane and Regel. Now the Gemara says, okay, well, what are Shane and Regel? Where is it saying in the Torah, and what are they? So the Gemara begins a lengthy discussion of those, which we will learn on the next stuff.